15. Extend and extent. Analogy.
The simplest way to define the role of the media agency is to take an analogy from fishing. The media agency must help businesses advertise their products. The fish in the analogy are the target market.
Analogous.
Advertising is analogous to fishing. Both practices must have specific targets.
Universal.
People from different cultures perceive happy, sad, or angry facial expressions in different ways. That is, facial expressions are not the universal language of emotions.
Universally.
Although direct answers are often needed and well-placed, they do not work universally. You should try to understand why people ask those questions.
Universality.
They have found the universality of religious experiences.
Quote.
Many scientists and artists notice the universality of creativity. To quote Freeman Dyson, "The analogies between science and art are very good as long as you are talking about the creation." The idea comes from a Mark Twain quote, "Eat a live frog first thing in the morning, and nothing worse will happen to you the rest of the day."
Reproduce.
Some animals return to their birthplaces to reproduce. His famous paintings are reproduced for tourists.
Reproduction.
Charles Darwin said organismic adaptation was ultimately caused by competition for survival and reproduction. Modern psychological theory states that the process of understanding is a matter of construction, not reproduction, which means that the process of understanding takes the form of the interpretation of data, coming from the outside and generated by our mind.
Reproductive.
All advanced forms of animals have reproductive organs.
Extend.
Plants can't change location or extend their reproductive range without help. "I want to give you something," he said, extending his hand to me.
Extended.
Now we are seniors, and my wife must use a wheelchair for extended walks.
Extension.
Sport marketers don't rely only on winning the game, but also develop product extensions such as the facility, souvenirs, and food. I understand your request for a deadline extension.
Extensive.
Some of the most extensive research on the subject of success was conducted by George Gallup.
Extent.
There is room for personal choice, and control over time is to a certain extent in our hands. A measurement system is objective to the extent that two people arrive at the same measurements.
Lyric.
The extended copyright protection frustrates new creative endeavors, such as including poetry and song lyrics on internet sites.
Literal.
By giving the movie a setting that was contemporary at the time of its release, audiences were able to experience and identify with its themes more easily than they would have if the film had been a literal adaptation of the novel written in the 19th century.
Literally.
If something went wrong and the bag came open during the transaction, this literally let the cat out of the bag. And this is why revealing a secret is said to be letting the cat out of the bag.
Metaphor.
He used the metaphor of an iceberg to describe the large portion of learning, informal learning, that remains invisible.
Metaphorical.
Every word can have a metaphorical as well as a literal meaning.
Metaphorically.
Using the camera at your own head height works well for photographing adults, but for children, the camera will look downward. You are looking down on the child, literally and metaphorically, and the resulting picture can make the child look smaller and less significant.
Policy.
Your proposed policy of closing libraries on Monday as a cost-cutting measure could be harmful to these children.
Supremacy.
Rome enjoyed absolute supremacy around the Mediterranean.
Rhetoric.
According to the individualist form of rhetoric about science, discoveries are made in laboratories.
Rhetorical.
In the Greek democracy, supporters of rival policies struggled to get the rhetorical supremacy.
Pedestrian.
They found that pedestrians at unmarked crosswalks looked both ways more often and crossed the road more quickly. Art dealers refused to buy his paintings, saying they were pedestrian and unimaginative.
Set off.
We set off early in the morning to avoid the heat of the day. The coronavirus set off the global financial and health crisis.
Prose.
The research showed that the more challenging prose and poetry set off far more electrical activity in the brain than the more pedestrian versions.
Pseudonym.
She wrote poems under the pseudonym Mary Elliott.
Pseudonymous.
Because blockchains are pseudonymous, they can be used to coordinate socially unacceptable or criminal conduct.